Congratulations on part of your world, the book. I was curious to know why is now the right time? I know you talk a little bit about it, but is this the stage in your life where it feels right to do this memoir?
No, it was not my plan at all. Never in a million years did I want to write a book. So when Tyndale called me in February 2020 before the world shut down, I said no. I don't have any interest of doing that. I don't want to do a memoir, an autobiography. It just felt really cheesy to me. And then they called back in March and we kind of went through it again. And they're like, well, what if you just, if we look at it as little snippets of some stories, of some experiences, and we make it more like a thank you letter, like a love letter to Disney and to Howard and to the people along my journey, would that be more to your liking? And I was like, yeah. And then my brother is an author, and he said, if one person just picks up the book and maybe reads one little story and they feel, I don't know, encouraged, or maybe they want to try something, or they see the mistakes that I make and let's just try something else. Let's not do what she did. Then, would it be worth it? And I thought, yeah, I think I can look at it more in that light. But it was definitely a difficult process for me because it's not something I ever desired to do. But it's out there now, so I'm just going with the flow.
I can't remember all the details of
Right.
like my formative years. Did you keep journals or diaries
No,
or anything like that to reference
it was
back
really
on?
hard. It was really, really hard. That was one of the most painful things, was to go back in time for positive and negative reasons. But it was very hard for me to recall. I do not have a fantastic memory. I homeschooled our kids for 17 years, so I pretty much used up all those brain cells. So everything that happened before the kids is pretty lost to me. So it was just hours upon hours and hours and months of talking for recording and then transcribing it. So it was a very taxing process.
Was your process to write the book primarily, you know, talking and sharing your experiences
Yes,
and then
it was
putting
all
pen to
audio.
paper?
Yeah, no
Okay.
pen to paper. No, it was all audio. That's why it sounds like me. I just wanted it to sound like me, and I definitely didn't want it to sound like, I had all this great wisdom to share and got all this great information. I just wanted it to be more of a vulnerable and kind of authentic, and you get what you get, and it's messy. And, if it's a little bit encouraging to you, then that's awesome.
Is there going to be an audiobook? Is the audiobook going to be those recording sessions laid out, or did you then have to reread everything for
I
an
had to
audiobook?
go back in. I had to go back in and create an audiobook, which was really hard. It was really hard. It was very emotional, and it was 5 very long days of recording session. But I needed to do the audiobook for people. Obviously, when you're traveling and stuff, hard holding a piece of paper in your hand is hard, especially nowadays. So the audiobook just made the most sense. And I had to approach the audiobook not as a professional voiceover artist, but as just a real human being, where there's a lot of mistakes in it. And I stumble on some words, and I laugh through some words, I cry through some words. So tried to just make it real without correcting it as a VO artist.
The chapter titles are brilliant. You pull from lyrics, not
Yeah.
only of songs from Little Mermaid, but from other places in your career and in your life. I know with an audiobook, getting the rights to melody can be tough. So, did you have to spoken line any lyrics that you're referencing when doing the audiobook?
Yes, we did have to obviously go through licensing and everything for everything that has to do with the book. Tyndale has a huge legal department that they put that through. But yeah, when it came to the audiobook, I do kind of speak through the lyrics. We chose to do that rather than to sing. I think there may have been a couple of moments that we were thinking about maybe singing a line or two if it felt like that was necessary for the book. So yeah, we definitely had to be careful with all of that and do it the right way.
That must have been hard for you, I'm sure, because you're just so
Yeah,
used to singing, singing
right,
all these songs.
exactly. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the chapter titles. How, like, what was the process like of figuring out the stories you were going to tell, and how those, like, when did that process come about of thinking like, okay,
Really,
this is chapter title of taking this lyric?
we talked about it right at the beginning. Once we kind of decided that we weren't doing like this chronological order, that we were kind of doing little snippets and little stories so that you could kind of pick up the book, just read little one chapter and then put it down. And you don't have to like, stick through it. And the other chapter doesn't have to affect this chapter, that type of thing. So right at the beginning is kind of when we came up with, gee, how do we kind of figure this out? And so the lyrics just kind of made sense. It just kind of tied it all up, and I felt like it made a great connection.
One of my favorite stories as a Disney fan that kind of made my eyes pop out of my head was Mickey Mouse in Studio 54.
Yeah.
And before it was a Feinstein cabaret,
Right.
back when it was the club. I was curious, at that moment in time when you look back on it now, does it feel almost like a premonition that Mickey
Yeah.
Mouse was there at
Yeah.
your after party for Smile?
Yeah, absolutely it does. It feels like a full circle, it's just from when I think about, Howard and Marvin writing Disneyland for me, and then Howard getting hired by Disney and all the powers that be and the executives coming to see his work in Smile and coming backstage to talk to me because of the song, obviously. And then the show closing tragically and Howard feeling sorry for us and giving a handful of us girls the opportunity, as a consolation prize to audition, but never being considered for the movie at all. So, just to see all of that and to have opening night be of Smile right before the review came out, and killed the show, of which the party completely disbanded at that moment. But to have Mickey Mouse there and giving me the keys to the kingdom that are, in my hallway here in the house, and I kind of look through the whole line of it. It's pretty crazy. It's a pretty crazy journey to see how all those pieces of the puzzle were put together.
Your book is a lot about gratitude, but you mentioned the bad review. So Frank Rich comes up quite a few times. There's not a
Oh,
villain in the book, but
well,
at
he's
times
not.
it's like a dark cloud looming over your head. I was curious to know: have you ever met Frank? Have you ever talked to him? Like, do you have any kind of a perception about like, does he realize with his words how much power he has over so many people's lives?
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did. I have seen him in the theater before, but I don't believe I personally went up to him and had a conversation or met him or anything like that. But yeah, he single handedly killed my three Broadway shows before Crazy for You. So hey, uh, yeah, the power of the pen. But hey, he had a right to write those reviews. Were they correct? I don't know. Sometimes you have the people's opinion and then you have a critic's opinion. I think nowadays we have the opportunity to have both. You can have shows that maybe don't get great reviews, but the people love it and the tickets are selling. And that's really all that the bottom line is, are they selling tickets? And I think, with having Frank Rich destroy Smile so quickly, and it was the holiday time. I just don't think they could have got rallied enough to try to figure out how do we promote this to get where the people like it. So just one of those things.
Now the power of the pen is in your hand. And one of the things that you so beautifully do in the book is really share your gratitude for the people in your lives who have really been there to help you. Obviously, you've talked about Howard Ashman; he's a huge part of the
Like,
book. You talk about your college vocal coach.
yeah.
What was important to you when you were putting this together? Like how did you decide who are the people whose stories I'm going to tell? Some of them are alive. Did you have conversations with them
Right.
before this? Like, hey, I'm
I
doing this
did.
book.
I
Yeah.
did. I did contact my vocal coach Steve because I said, I have a pretty nice chapter about our time together and how much of a launching point that was for me in my career, and how what a huge support he was for me in making the decision to leave in the middle of a semester to start working professionally. So there are several people that I did talk to that are still alive and with us. And of course, my important people at Disney, my boss, Rick Dempsey, he read the book and he was kind of my liaison, for the company just to make sure I had stories right. And of course, I prefaced right at the beginning of the author's note that I never wanted to write a book, and also that I probably recalled some things in a distorted way, and they're probably not accurate. But give me some grace, and I did the best I could. So it's not like I'm saying the be all end all. My word is the final word. It's just an interpretation of my stories of different experiences that I went through, and like you said, it came from a spirit of gratitude, wanting to shine the light on various people. So I think I had about 65 stories. So we had to narrow it down to about 24, 25. That was hard to decide what stays, what goes, but we tried to cross the threshold of blending Disney and Broadway and family and homeschooling and physical health. We tried to, make it an even feel across the field of the various stories.
And you're very honest in the book about, very personal struggles that you've had, while not giving away everything. Like, I felt like you still retain your sense of privacy. Like, no one's going to
Yes.
read the book, find you, and be like, I know all about this, 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 and this.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. I didn't
how
want it to be airing dirty laundry. And my goal, and good, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but my goal was that everyone could pick up the book and not feel excluded, and that anyone could pick up the book and not feel hurt. Those were my two caveats. So I'm sorry, go ahead with your question.
No, I mean, that was basically, what I was interested to know. In particular, you're very honest about, the time that you and Ray had apart,
Yeah.
and what that was like. I was curious, did you have him read it
Oh,
before it? I know this can be very personal.
very personal. We had to decide, and of course, the kids, that was a portion of our lives that the kids didn't really know about. They're 21 and 23. So I said, you're going to have some questions, and we're here for that. But it's not like we kept our life a secret. It just depended on the time frame that we felt like was the right time to share it with them.
Little Mermaid, it was a formative film for me, and obviously it really took your career into different directions. We're now decades past, and sadly, a lot of the voice cast we're starting to lose. We just lost Pat Carroll, and she's not the first that we've lost. Now, you mentioned in the book, I know a lot of times with animation, you don't really get to see the other cast. You maybe meet them at the premiere, but with Mermaid, they did a traditional Broadway style read through. How I know that Ariel has been a big part of your life, and you're kind of her ambassador, and you do a lot with the character.
Mhm.
Had you intersected with a lot of the other voices, particularly Pat Carroll, Renee Auberjonois,
Yeah.
Sammy Wright?
Right. Sam and I did a failed Broadway show together while we were doing Mermaid. And so we had that extra connection. And then Sam and Renee and I did, publicity circuits every 7 years when we would re-release the film and take it out of the vault, and we would do the press tours again. So we got to do those together. Pat and I physically together did the opening of both of the parks of our attractions for the Little Mermaid attraction. And then she was supposed to come in person to D23 August 2019 when I hosted our 30th anniversary. But unfortunately, both she and Sam were unable to make the trip. But she joined us virtually, which was really great. So yeah, she had an amazing life, an amazing career, an amazing family. I think she had an incredible journey for her life, and we miss her so much. Um, but grateful that she's had such a full life.
Yeah, and I was at that panel. It was wonderful. I
Oh, it was
really enjoyed
fun.
that.
It was a lot of fun.
Now, they say never judge a book by its cover, but I do want to talk about your cover because it really reminds me of, um, for I think it was the 10th anniversary of Little Mermaid in the late 90s when they did the first theatrical re-release, and they did the
Right.
McDonald's Golden Toys.
Yeah.
You had done a music video for that VHS release, and it was you in a flowy dress on a beach. And so when I
Yeah.
saw the cover, I was like, oh, this could have been like just a screen grab from that music video. Did you feel at all like you were reliving that shoot?
Yeah, just a little bit. Well, the way that this cover came up is we tossed it around with my family and with Tyndale back and forth and back and forth. The title and the cover took us forever to come up with. And My family and I did not want part of my world. We were going for something a little less obvious, but Tyndale, you have 1.2 seconds to choose a book, whether it's online or in person. And we felt like we needed to uh, defer to their creative team that deals with book sales professionally, because that's their job, is to sell the book. It's not my job to sell the book, it's their job. And whether it sells or not doesn't affect me, it affects them. So we let them decide on part of my world. That was hard for our family to let that go, because we really wanted to stay away from that title, but that was a deal breaker that was really important for Tyndale. Then when it came to the cover, once we had that, I said, well, I think I'm okay. At first we were battling about the beach, and it was going to be rocks, and I'm like, we don't want it spot on. But then as a family, we were like, you know what, as long as it's going to be part of my world, and we're going to work this little fin into the Y, and I think we should do the water. Well, we're shooting at Palm Beach, the island of Palm Beach, where we've had a little condo for 36 years. So that's our beach that we've been to and brought the children to since they were born. And our son is a filmmaker, and our daughter-in-law is a professional photographer, fashion photographer for Stitch Fix. So the kids did the shoot. They designed it, picked wardrobe, styling, lighting, and they did the whole shoot with Tyndale. We had a Tyndale team, but it was really my son and my daughter-in-law that ran the whole session. And so we shot over the course of 2 sunrises and 2 sunsets, and we had a lot of fun. So because it's the kids' design, they designed the whole cover. They did the font, they did the coloring, everything. Since it's the kids that did it, it's extra special, to me.
That's awesome. I wasn't expecting it to be so much content in that answer. So thank you. Uh, are you able to say what your intended title of the memoir was?
We were kind of going back and forth. We had thought about something along the terms of just a one single word, like an uncharted type of thing. But there were so many books that had that title. We had talked about something to do with voice. I don't know, voice was going to just be like a single word, or, my voice, or just something that had nothing to do with the title, is kind of where we as a family were leaning towards. But Tyndale was really, punching up like Treasures Untold, anything that they could grab from a lyric. And then they finally just came out and said, you know what? We only have this 1.2 seconds. We have got to get the title. We've got to deal with that. So we just switched it up to part of my world.
Yeah,
And I'm living with it.
yeah. No, I mean,
again, it wasn't our first choice, but I think it makes the most sense.
I will say the title stands out, the cover stands out. So, and I think it tells people right away, without in that 1.2 seconds, what this is, who you are, and why they should open this up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now that it's about to be out there in the world, I was curious to know what else is on the horizon for you. I know there's a live action Little Mermaid in the works. There's a Disenchanted sequel. Pixar's always doing stuff with the Toy Story verse, and even there's a Barbie movie, and nothing would be more perfect than seeing you in there somehow. So are you able to talk about anything? Do you have anything lined up?
No,
Where we
I'm
might see
not.
you?
I'm not involved on camera with Mermaid or Disenchanted, but I am involved with press and publicity around it.
Okay.
So I'll be heading to D23. I'm doing, I think, 6 or 7 different events for the company in support of various projects, and special events and that kind of stuff. And then I'm between Disneyland and Disney World. I do a lot of corporate events. And then I christen our ships and do our maiden voyages. So we just did that whole cycle of the Wish, which was amazing. And I do a lot of corporate concerts for our cruise line as well, which I love. They're so much fun. Symphony concerts and cabaret concerts, but then I do conventions. So I have a pretty hefty upcoming convention schedule in person now, since we lost those 18 months. that we're kind of playing catch up. So yeah, so there'll be a lot of that coming up for the rest of this year, into 2023.
Great. Well, all very exciting. I'll be at the expo, so I'll be looking for you.
Yeah,
And
I'll see you there.
yeah, and thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you so much.
congratulations.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you so much. You're so
of
sweet. I
course.
really appreciate you having